Welcome back to another template design video, and today we're going to look at the Plateau, which seems like a really basic template. All it is that the green features a tier, and this is one that's used on pretty much every course you would imagine, but it's about how you make use of that to really make this versatile. We're going to have a look at different ways in which you can use it, what it might test, and how it can be done in particularly interesting fashion. Enjoy! So the first course that we're going to look at is Montauk Field Club by Dylan Bronson, and we're going to look at the 15th hole here because I think it's a great example of what you're looking for. So first of all, you've got that one plateau clearly here. You've got a high tier and you've got a low tier. In terms of what's interesting, well, there's a couple of things. One is you've got this kind of wrap around sort of tier. It's like almost in a kind of reverse L shape, and then the low front left portion. So that immediately creates a number of really interesting pin positions. How are we going to get to this one? How are we going to get to one down here? What lines do we want to come in on? But all of this is always governed by how do you want to approach pins based on or relative to this one plateau, this slope that is going to run the ball from high down to low. And that can either be helping as a backstop, or it can be hurting if you're coming at it this way, for example, or it can just be something to bear in mind laterally as well as vertically. So as in if we pull our shot, we're running down it. Now I chose to start it off with this one because I think this is a really interesting take on it. First of all, where do we want to be approaching for this pin? For me, it depends on the shot you're playing in. If it's a longer shot, I probably want to be coming in this way because I know I've got a bit of margin for error of landing the ball and rolling it through. Or I can just bomb it as far as I can and just chance a wedge. There's a tiny little bit of a backstop he's given us, thoughtfully, that means that you've got, if you're dead at the pin, you're not running off the back, but if you're a little bit left, you may be. Probably don't want to be coming at it too far this way because there's just not much forgiveness there. So I might be tending more towards this right hand side. Where I think this hole gets really interesting is, well, if the pin's there, I definitely want to be coming in this way. I do not want to be coming in from anywhere over this side because my landing area is super shallow there. If it's in the front, don't think it really matters. We can kind of put it wherever. You may want to bear in mind hitting towards that bunker, but you'd have to be hitting a really bad shot. So there's lots there. Now, how has he made that interesting? Well, the angle of the dogleg means that driver is certainly running out unless I'm hitting a bit of a fade or I'm down lofting a little bit. So for me, unless I want to smash it into the bunker and just take my chances, which might not be a bad option, I'm probably not hitting driver unless I'm down lofting to about there, and even then it might run through, and that's the angle I didn't really want anyway. So do I want to go to 3-wood? Well, if I want to go to 3-wood, then I'm definitely hitting into the bunker. 5-wood, probably still. So although there's a lot of space, there's not much club I want to hit. And I can play anywhere back here and I've got a full wedge, but I really want this angle. So I want to be hugging this side of the fairway, and guess what? It slightly slopes this way. So it's a really subtle tee shot that is done very nicely by angle of fairway, that cross hazard, and kind of what that green is doing. So I think usually, thankfully the wind is slightly helping us today. So I'm going to hit a 4-iron and hope that the wind keeps it right there. That's about as good as we can. And as you can see, I've generated a decent angle in around that one plateau. If we just hit dead at it, we've got a much tougher shot because I've got to carry it all the way. The angle that I've got currently, well, okay, I may have a slightly longer shot than you might want, but I've got margin for error this way. I can land it short and I'll still be having a decent putt, decent look at it. So we'll have a little look at that. Slight upslope. Cinch another little bit out of it. And hopefully that kicks in just a little. And it's not the best shot, but because of how we've played the hole strategically, we've got a good look at it. And that's a really interesting short 4 based on that one green design, which I really like. So we're going to look at a couple of others and see what else we can do with this template. Now on the 5th at Raynor Ridge, which is a plateau hole, and another way in which you can use this interestingly is using the whole green as that one plateau but having a big false front at the beginning. So how is this going to test you? Well, it can leave very short up and downs that are just a little bit tricky, particularly for this sort of a pin. If you're having a splash shot from here, you don't want to go too far and you don't want to leave it short and running all the way back off. But as a par 5 as well, we want to be thinking, what shot are we going to have that this slope is going to take some of the sting out of, so we're not ending up way too far long, but also that is going to make it up there. So it's really just that false front defines this green and gives some interesting pins. What I really enjoy about this one is, other than just being one false front that's dead across the front of the green, it's a little bit more severe in the middle, which forces you to go either one or, well, encourages you to either lean one or side or the other, and that's going to bring either this bunker a little bit more into play or this bunker short right. So it's the same sort of concept, just done in a slightly different fashion. If we look at the tee shot as well, as ever with short par 5s with that one major feature, how do we make the most of it? But if you make the tee shot really easy and just have people hitting straight down the middle of the fairway with no problems whatsoever, then this becomes kind of trivial, because you've got probably, if we're thinking drivers maybe going to 330, you've probably got just an iron in. Whereas if we either encourage you to lay back, that makes the second shot really matter with you carrying that false front, because you're thinking more about distance control. It also means that we want to tighten the landing zone a little bit more, so that if you do take this tee shot on, you've got to be absolutely nailing it in order to have a decent look at the green, which seem to have managed. As we say, you then got this iron, but you're right between clubs, which will obviously change based on wind direction, etc. But you want to be thinking about, probably with this one now, I'd say I'm looking at hitting a partial or de-lofting a 5-wood in order to get it roughly there, and we don't want to be too far, or we've got a pretty fast putt down. So all to do with how that false front basically dominates this hole. So the next example we're going to look at is a par 3, and this is one of those holes that the idea I had initially worked out so nicely on this course. I've tried to redo it a number of times or use a similar concept, and I don't think I'll ever come close to anything that I like as much as this. And so, as you can see, there's that one plateau in the green. It's that diagonal, which I think adds a little bit more interest, and we'll look at that with multiple pins in a minute. But it's how the plateau works in tandem with this big fall off to the right that I think makes this one so good. The green being benched into a hillside means that it all flows with the land. So leaping back to the tee, and you'll see that for this pin you've got an awkward green angle where everything is running off the green and you don't want to play too close to it, but you do have that plateau that you can use as a bit of a backstop. Slight elevation change, nothing too much, but if you're landing on the top slope, you're facing a really tricky putt down. So it's basically goading you into, you kind of have to use this as a backstop. You have to land the ball around about here, run it on, and you will end up very, very close. If you push your tee shot just a little, you're all the way down here, facing a really nightmarish up and down. If you go a bit long, it's trouble as well. So really, the play with this one was to end up short. If you pull it just a little way still into that tier, and it's going to run it round. Anywhere on this plateau is great. Now, there are other pins here though. You've got one here, and one right at the front. The one right at the front is probably the hardest. You have to fully loft something, or you basically just hit the same shot as you would do for this one and just face, rather than ending up right by the pin, just putt back and you're slightly uphill. For these ones, there's a tiny little knob at the back which will basically, if you land the ball here and run it up, it will direct balls either very close to that pin or to that pin. So those back two pins, definitely the tougher ones on here. So let's hit a shot and see how we go. Should be alright. I mean, it helps that there's zero wind, but as you can see, because of the plateau, we don't actually have to play close to the other hazard. You could go straight out the flag, but the plateau allows you a little bit of creativity for this one. So this one is more looking at it as a helping slope with this pin, but it can definitely be something that challenges you a little bit more as well. So back at Old Ainsdale for our second look at this, and we're going to look at one of the toughest versions of this. So this is a 463 yard par 4 that Joe designed. So this is all him. I can take zero credit for this hole. And this features, we should probably go to the green first, that plateau again, diagonal, so similar to Montauk in how it does that. And it also features a little false front as well. But that plateau is your one defining feature. In tandem with this, you can see that the green's clearly kind of running at a diagonal and wanting us to come in from one side rather than another. Now, what you had with the fairway as well was it flowing with the land, so 6 feet downhill. We also had it out of bounds, very close to this fairway, and given the steepness of the heavy rough, missing this fairway left is just not an option. You are reloading. You then had a centerline bunker that you could carry, but not necessarily in all winds. So you had to be thinking where you wanted to end up, and your flattest lie was down on the left hand side. So if you made it down to here, that's the sort of shot you're facing in. Now, with the way he worked the plateau along with this mounding, you're kind of wanting to be as far left as you possibly can for pretty much all pins, because that will allow you to crest this plateau, avoid those mounds running the ball away from the green. It does mean that you're taking on this false front a little bit more, so for this pin you might have actually wanted to be a bit more on this side, because that means you can negotiate the false front just a little easier. Same potentially with this one. Actually, you can probably land a tiny bit short, but this was very much the toughest version of the green that I've seen. And I don't think Joe initially termed it as a plateau, because there's a lot more going on it. The other thing you've got to bear in mind is pretty much wherever you are facing a slope that's dragging the ball this way. So when approaching this green, it's taking it closer towards that plateau and running down. And if you missed left on the green as well, you had your out of bounds there as well. So again, that one big green contour can really define strategy from the off, and that's, I guess, what makes a really good plateau. It's where that one slope is your defining feature. We see a lot of plateau greens, pretty much every course has one, but it's when that plateau is integral to the strategy that you really count it as being a proper version of the template. So next we're going to take a super quick look at the first at Sapelo River, and you can see straight away, you can kind of see it there, but when we zoom out of the camera view you can clearly see there's that one plateau going high side, low side. And with the green on a bit of a diagonal as well, that means there's only one side of the fairway you really want to be coming in at, and that's from this side. So although there's a load of space out to the right, your approach shot to some of these pins from there, particularly this one tucked behind a bunker, you can hit driver all day out the right hand side. You're just piling the pressure onto the approach shot. So this one really rewarded people for playing close to this bunker, not running into this one, and that was kind of a partial driver or a 3-wood down here. Now, where this became fun, again, I try to use these sorts of slopes in two ways. Well, if you were going for this pin, you can always use this slope as kind of like a bit of a safety net or a buffer, if you will. If you're ending up here, well, you can land this shot coming in at this pin here, here, even right down here. It gives you a bit of vertical margin for error because the ball is only ever travelling there. As long as it stops at the bottom, you don't really mind. And you then had this one little pin front left as well, which kind of gave you a few options as to how you played it. Same concept, another different way in which to use it. So that's the plateau, and it's a really simple template, as you can imagine, but it's one where I don't think it's used as powerfully as perhaps it could be. A lot of people will just chuck a tier on a green and call it a day, and you've really got to understand what that function is and how everything else plays off it. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the corner of the green, the one you're looking at now, or Ouarzazate's third hole, drive one. Everything is in relation to one high central plateau, and it's depending on where the pin is, working out where you want to be in the fairway. So it is really flexible. It's something that you can use in a number of different ways to generate angle plays, but the key thing with this is that the plateau cannot be an afterthought. It has to be an integral part of the strategy of the hole in order for that to really work as best it possibly can do and not feel just an extra. As ever, I hope that you've enjoyed. and see you again soon.